Welcome to Truehope Cast, the official podcast of Truehope Canada, where we take a deep dive into mental health's many physiological and psychological aspects. This is the show for you if you're looking for motivation, information, knowledge, and solutions, and that's what we are all about here at Truehope Canada. And Truehope Canada is a mind and body-based supplement company dedicated first and foremost to promoting brain and body health through non-invasive nutritional means. For more information about us, you can visit truehopecanada.com. Today, I welcome Dr. Jack Wolfson to the podcast. Now, Dr. Jack is a board-certified cardiologist, best-selling author, husband, father, and America's #1 natural heart doctor. For over 2 decades, more than 1 million people have experienced the transformational power of his courses and events. He is named one of America's top functional medicine doctors and is a 5-time winner of the Natural Choice Awards as a holistic MD. His book, The Paleo Cardiologist, The Natural Way to Heart Health, was an Amazon #1 bestseller, and Dr. Wolfson's work has been covered by media outlets across the US, including NBC, CNN, and the Washington Post. Today, we're going to be discussing heart health and medical freedom, and our actionable question for the show is going to be, what are the key precautionary steps you can take today to improve your heart health? Enjoy the show. Okay, good morning, Dr. Jack. Thank you so much for joining Truehope Cast. How are you? What is going well?
Everything's going well, Simon. Listen, my family's fantastic. I feel fantastic. The message of health and wellness is getting out there to the entire world, and hopefully we are winning this one. I know the other side, big pharma, big hospitals, big government, are trying to, defeat us at every turn and squash, our freedom of information, our freedom to express, and freedom of speech. But the truth shall prevail.
Absolutely. Very well said. We're going to be discussing heart disease and medical freedom today. And at the end of the podcast, we're going to be offering some solutions to the question, what are some key precautionary steps I can take today to improve my heart health? So we'll build up to that question at the end. But just as an introduction, Dr. Jack, would you mind just letting us know a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a board certified cardiologist like my father before me. So I'd like to say that I was born into the medical matrix. My father, as a cardiologist, he's talking to my mother about cardiology stuff, and some of his colleagues when I was in the womb. So I'm hearing this since before I was born, and then, of course, as a young child, and so on and so forth. And my dream was to become a cardiologist just like my father, and that's exactly what I did. At the age of 31, I joined the biggest group in the state of Arizona, making a lot of money, very busy as a cardiologist, really at the top of the game, one of Phoenix top doctors. I was awarded that. And as my career was taking off, unfortunately, my father, he was not doing well. So he was in his late 50s. And eventually he would get diagnosed by the Mayo Clinic with progressive supranuclear palsy, or PSP. It's a Parkinson's-like illness. And the Mayo Clinic said they have no idea why my father is sick and dying and no treatment. And they said he'll be dead within 3 years, and he would pass within 3 years. And simultaneously and serendipitously, I met this 29-year-old woman who is a doctor of chiropractic. And she told me all the reasons why my father is sick and dying. So the Mayo Clinic had no reasons. And here, the 29-year-old chiropractor, she's got all the reasons. And the reasons, as we can talk about, but those reasons made total sense to me. It's not something I ever learned in medical school, but I would do a lot of research. I would change my personal life. I would change my professional life. And then it was interesting, she said, you need to become a DC doctor of chiropractic, you need to become a DC. And I said, wait a second, I'm not going to become a chiropractor after 10 years of medical training and where I'm at right now. She said, no, not DC doctor of chiropractic. You need to become a DC doctor of cause. And that's what I would do. I would leave the big cardiology group. I would start my own practice, natural heart doctor. And of course, I would go on to marry this beautiful woman inside and out. And we've got 4 children and live in the mountains. And the fight is real. The fight is on a daily basis. But I wouldn't trade any of it for the world.
Amazing. So it sounds like from the struggles your father experienced, and was that the kind of the first eye-opening experience you had of like the conventional medicine not really having any answers for him, and you kind of had this chance conversation with this 29-year-old woman that changed your perspective a little bit? How did that work?
Yeah, it was as she said all these things. Again, divine intervention just opened up my eyes to, in my brain to the reality of what was going on. What she said made perfect sense. So talking about lifestyle, talking about nutrition, talking about all the toxins going on in the world, that these are the things that lead to all disease. And I'm seeing heart attacks and strokes and heart failure and atrial fibrillation. I'm seeing this on a daily basis. And mainstream medicine, it's true, right? It's just, here's a pharmaceutical for this, here's a surgery for this, do this kind of radiation-based test. And clearly people are not getting better. The hospital's a revolving door. You have a heart attack, we put in a stent, you go home, you come back 3 months later, either with another heart attack, a complication from the pharmaceutical, congestive heart failure. We're just kind of always in this, reactive mode instead of prevention. And I will say, listen, bless the men and women who work in emergency rooms and trauma centers, but for prevention, the medical community has nothing. And then, finally, let me say that, the medical doctors are really good at all the different labels, right? You've got anxiety, you've got depression, you've got bipolar disorder, you've got cancer, you've got heart disease, you've got high blood pressure, on and on, like 10,000 different diagnosis codes in the ICD, 10 book, 10,000 different codes. But it's all from the same stuff. It's all from the same thing. So whatever leads to mental health disorders also leads to cardiovascular disease, also leads to cancer. So this is root cause medicine. You go after the roots, and that's always going to be the answer.
When you were working primarily as a cardiologist, were you seeing patients kind of at the late end or beginning of disease manifestation, or were you seeing individuals on a early treatment basis? Because I just imagine most doctors see individuals, especially specialists, they see patients who have been referred to them and they've got significant symptoms and they have to go and see a cardiologist about what's going on for them. So were most of the people you were seeing, were they having had serious heart issues?
I would love to say that the majority of people who come to see me are there for primary prevention. They've never had a heart attack. They've never had high blood pressure. Maybe they've been told they have family history or something like that. So they see us before anything bad happens. But the majority of people I see, they've had the heart attack, they've had the event, they've had the pain point, and now they want to do something about it. And of course, in my practice, which is a holistic and natural practice, we typically have seen people who've already had cardiac events and they're not happy with their conventional medical doctor, their conventional cardiologist. They don't want to be on the pharmaceuticals. They want a better way. And that's what we, do in my company. And it tends to be, very successful. I do want to use the opportunity here also to talk about this whole concept of genetics or family history. I want to say this very clearly. Our genetics are perfect. Our genetics are perfect. Whoever designed us, call that person God, evolution, God created evolution, whatever it may be, we're perfect. We can run and jump and see and feel, and we can make babies. We can do some pretty amazing stuff. Why would we be genetically programmed to have heart attacks, strokes, brain diseases, cancer? We're not. All of these things are man-made. They're all man-made from an unhealthy lifestyle and unhealthy nutrition, environmental toxins. This is what it's from, or what I would say violations of eat well, live well, and think well. So the concept of family history would be very similar. Now, family history is true in the sense that we eat and live and think like our family does. Therefore, we're more likely to suffer from the same health problems that they do, but it's not in our genes. The doctors love to say it's in our genes because then it implies there's nothing we can do about it. It's in your genetics, nothing you could do. Take this pill. And that's just the way that us doctors are brainwashed really since day one of medical school. Pharmaceutical industry is a $1.5 trillion industry and growing every single year. So the money is not in the cure, and the money is not in the prevention. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was quite clear to me doing my nutrition training that we inherit the environmental factors from our parents and our grandparents a lot more than, you know, our genetic characteristics. What we eat, how we eat, when we eat, our response to stresses, etc. Like all these things might seem minor to individuals, but like it's happening constantly, and especially the nervous system aspect. I mean, how much your nervous system or your fight or flight nervous system is engaged on a daily basis is going to contribute significantly to your ability to digest food and to engage your immune system, etc. So yeah, it makes a heck of a lot of sense to me. And I wanted to ask you, because you've got this very interesting experience with working as a conventional cardiologist and then shifting more towards like a preventative approach, where do you feel that like the psychological aspects come in regards to like mindset around individual prevention rather than waiting for something disease to manifest or symptoms to manifest then going to see your doctor? Because, you know, I'm 40 years old now and I take steps towards my health today for when I'm 80 and I'm 90. I'm thinking about that now. I'm thinking about my grandkids, my great grandkids, and I want to be able to move and be able to do all of these things. I'm thinking about that now, but I don't think I'm the typical male 40-year-old in like North America. I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that. So I just wonder, like, what's your opinion in regards to like most people's mindset around that prevention piece?
Yeah, well, I do want to, say that the majority of doctors, the majority of true healthcare practitioners, in the sense of people who are holistic and natural, and you as in your degree in nutrition and so many others like that. We always talk about the nutrition part of the story. We always debate, should we go, vegan, vegetarian, paleo, keto, carnivore? Where should we go on this whole thing? And what the importance of sleep and sunshine. And yes, everybody's got to exercise and do all this stuff. But we forget that the thought processes, the mindset of people thinking well is just as important, if not more so, which you know this already because this is your business, is if not more so important than the food we put in our mouths. Because if we are under stress, if we are under fear, if we feel anxiety, if we feel worry, if we feel socially isolated, if we're unhappy, we're going to be much more likely to have cardiovascular disease, for example, and of course the other diseases. There's PTSD, there's childhood traumas. These things are not addressed by the medical doctors at all, and people are suffering because of it. So we have to really elevate that think well component to the forefront. And I ask people who have had cardiac events, what was your stress level like before the event? And every single time, Simon, people say, oh, wow. Yeah, it was chronic stress. And then there was an acute stressor. There's actually two well-known cardiac diagnoses that are related to stress, most commonly in women. One is spontaneous coronary artery dissection, where a woman has no evidence of coronary artery disease, but under a stressful situation, the two layers of the coronary arteries, they shear, and then all of a sudden that creates a massive myocardial infarction. And then the other is something called broken heart syndrome, or professionally known as Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. And that is a Japanese term. And in any case, it's broken heart syndrome. And it's like the 55-year-old woman, she gets into a fight with her husband or with her boss, suffers a massive heart attack, no blockage there whatsoever. So these are stress-induced issues. And then I guess ultimately to answer, your question, about like the mindset, my father died at 63. I've got 4 children. I want to have grandchildren at some point, not anytime soon, but I want to have grandchildren at some point. I want to be around. I want to live. So the mindset is critical, not only so I can help change the world by living it to lead it, but also, walking the talk, because I personally want to live.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's so interesting that it takes something like a trauma or a tragedy or your own physical experience to then start going to see somebody like yourself to work with all the huge aspects it takes to prevent and treat significant disease. And I feel like, just in my own experience with people around me and myself, I feel like when you're 18, 19, you start getting a bit more independence, you might move away from home and go to university or whatever. You spend a good 10 years maybe not like treating your body as well as you should do. And then you get into like 30s, mid 30s, into your 40s, your body physically, in my experience anyway, can't deal with the same input and lack of output that you would do during your 20s. And then that's when significant problems happen. And we learn even from like kids play, when we play doctors, that's what you go and do. You just go and see a doctor when you start to feel ill or you start to feel pain or discomfort or something like that. And then you go there for a cure and you get something, right? So yeah, it's just interesting that so many people I've spoke to in regards to taking care of themselves now for the next 30, 40 years have gone through a significant trauma or something themselves, which could be this big, actually very positive awake moment that actually brings them into the light a little bit more and starts thinking about their own mortality, starts thinking about their kids. And I think we spoke about it before. It's very important to recognize that we pass on much more significantly our habits and how we treat ourselves as individuals to our kids. And inevitably we want our kids to grow up wanting to take care of themselves, wanting to consume like better foods and moving their bodies and being more active. Like, and we have a big responsibility as their primary mentors in life to be doing that.
Yeah, most certainly. And it's kind of like for me, definitely, once I met my wife and I saw what was happening to my father, that was very motivational. And then bringing children into the equation, especially as we get older, as an older dad, so I had I was 35 when our first son was born, and then 40 for our second son, and then 46 for our first daughter, and then 50 for our second daughter. So I'm changing diapers, at the age of 50, and now I'm 53. And it's pretty darn motivational to want to be around a long time. I mean, think about this, the average life expectancy of a male in the United States, at least is mid 70s. So that means, the average person at 53 will be alive until they're 75.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, that means my daughter, will be 25 years of age and on average would lose her father. Like, that's pretty horrific. So,
Yeah.
How would I be at the wedding? How would I be, and so I think all that stuff is extremely, motivational, and I want to be around. Our company is the home of the 100-year heart. And I think everybody deserves that, and everybody can, attain that.
Beautiful. Do we have a heart health crisis in North America, across the world?
Well, heart disease is number one killer worldwide. So the answer, is definitively yes. Despite the hundreds of billions of dollars that are spent on cardiovascular disease, Lipitor is the number one selling pharmaceutical of all time. And yet this, still remains, number one cause of heart disease. And it's not surprising, because medicine is not trying to cure anybody. They're just trying to perpetuate the sickness. They cause the sickness, they perpetuate the sickness. So there's no money in the cure of anything. So there definitely is a crisis. There's 100 million Americans with high blood pressure. Numbers are, of course, going to be the same in Canada. Again, with high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, heart rhythm problems like atrial fibrillation, or even just the average person who may be walking around and like their heart skips, it flips, racing heart feelings, palpitations is the medical diagnosis. And they go to the traditional doctor, and the traditional doctor's like, you're fine. Couple extra beats, no big deal. But yet that person feels very affected. And those actually are a predictor of, significant cardiovascular events over time. So the crisis is real, but it's a crisis of everything. It's a mental health crisis, coronary crisis, heart crisis, lung crisis, abdominal crisis.
Yeah.
We are the sickest, and the United States in particular has some of the worst outcomes of all developed countries. Infant mortality is extremely high in the United States. and all of our diseases are higher, despite the fact that we outspend everybody like combined, on health.
Yeah. It blows my mind that medicine and doctors, who are obviously trying to do their best, I guess, in some cases, that aren't questioned more in regards to how unbelievably sick people are. And you can just look at the statistics around the world, but especially in North America, that I think there's only one of two countries that advertises pharmaceutical drugs on the TV. And it's quite incredible how sick people still are, and how little we're still questioning this model. I don't know if it's crumbling somewhat. It seems to be very strong. And just as you say, like heart disease being the number one killer, that I wonder if as a pharmaceutical company, looking at that list is like looking at potential customers and clients, and if they can create something that's going to I don't want to say work, hopefully it's something that those individuals that can take, and after you get through all the red tape of a pharmaceutical, then that's big profit, that's big business. And why would you want to actually create something to take individuals off that list and take that heart disease from number 1 to number 3 to number 5 to number 10? That would seem to be completely against the ethos of pharmaceutical business.
Well, there's nothing that they could create, and they know that. They know that there's nothing that they're going to create that is going to lower the risk of cardiovascular disease, because they don't go after the cause. So that's like trying to say that they would create a new food, or like they would discover a food that was the key to longevity and cardiac longevity. They're not going to do that. All they do is create pharmaceuticals to treat conditions that they create. And that's their business. I mean, that's the business model. That's how corporations run. That's how they make profits. It's very clear. I mean, I've got so many different stories from my experience with pharmaceutical companies as a doctor. Just what they would do for us. I love to tell this story. When I was in high school, my father is a cardiologist. He was invited to speak in Hawaii for Merck Pharmaceuticals. So we took a family trip for a week. We flew there. My parents flew first class. My brother, sister, and I sat in coach, stayed in a beautiful hotel. All the meal, all the alcohol, all the drinks, all the excursions were paid for, boats and jet skis and all the stuff that we did. Everything was all paid for on this beautiful Hawaiian vacation. My father spoke for 1 hour, and everything was paid for. And I'm sure he got an honorarium on top of that. So it's really, and things may not be quite as obvious as they were, but doctors can be bought for the price of a pen. That's in the medical literature. It's extremely unfortunate as to that, case, but it's not, and I think more and more people are waking up to this. But Simon, as you would imagine, when I was a child in the 1970s, the talk about exercise and eating well and natural living, like this stuff has been going on for generations. People like us have been talking about it, but yet here we are, in the early parts of the 21st century, the first quarter of the 21st century, and we're still talking about the same health issues, the same concerns. So I think as much as things look positive, there's as much, headwind against us. And, but that being said, to the individual who's hearing this, listen, shame on you if you don't take charge of your health, because there's no one coming to help you. There really is not.
Yeah, that's quite that's absolutely a very, very true statement. I think that can actually be quite liberating for a lot of people. Are there any common drugs that are known to affect heart health? I'm sure there are so many unbelievable side effects with so many different drugs. I'm sure the drugs that are supposed to support heart health actually have some side effects that damage the heart as well. But are there any really common ones? So I think it's probably the average amount of medications that North Americans over 40 are taking is probably 4 or 5 or 6. I'm not sure.
Well, I think in your arena, if I think about pharmaceuticals, from a cardiology standpoint that affect the brain, I mean, there's clearly many, and as you know, anything could affect anything. But if we look at drugs like statin drugs, those are notorious for affecting brain function. Blood pressure drugs can be the same thing. Maybe the most famous example here would be beta blockers, on how beta blockers kind of things like metoprolol, atenolol, bisoprolol, they block epinephrine, norepinephrine, they block adrenaline, they block our zest for living, which is why they can lead to depressive characteristics. They can lead to fatigue, lethargy, lassitude, or whatever, just not having that kind of zest for life. So there's definitely problems in that area, as far as those pharmaceuticals are concerned. There's a lot of other drugs, of course, that impact the heart health, things that can raise blood pressure. That's, some common things in the brain space. Just to reiterate again, these people that have these mental health conditions, they are at much higher risk of cardiovascular disease. And the answer is not Prozac. In chapter 5 of my book, I called it, One Nation Under Prozac. And it's to really highlight that all these different mental and emotional issues, that the answer is not pharmaceuticals. There could be a lot of different answers of what people can do to optimize, brain health. But, clearly the pharmaceuticals are going to, be a major problem.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about the average North American taking like 4 medications, there's no research of those or studies of those working in combination with each other. Like, absolutely. I mean, you can question the individual research papers themselves in many cases, but the fact that, a doctor's prescribing 1 drug and then 2 and then 3, then 4. And if you were to ask that doctor about the effects of those working together inside of the body, that there would be absolutely no answer. So it's like who knows what kind of happens. It's side effects upon side effects.
And then, listen, would it be too much of a stretch to say that the pharmaceutical companies actually control all the research? Is that like a surprise to anybody? I mean, it's just a reality. Yeah. I mean, it's just a reality. If you look at the end of a paper, you can see that, again, they have to declare their biases or affiliations and stuff like that. And that's, often in there. And even if they don't, then you can kind of string it. And, these people do not get their research grants unless they're in bed with pharmaceuticals. It's just the way it's controlled. But I love to operate in the school of common sense. Let's just eat well, live well, think well, live like our ancestors did to the best of our abilities. Get that adequate sleep, sunshine, physical activity, eat the right foods, avoid the wrong foods. And that's going to be the strategy.
What are some of the more common things that you think people kind of like everyday people are doing every day that's damaging their heart health? Like clear things that we know that we could start reducing or even eliminating?
Well, I mean, first off, sleep is a big factor. So our ancestors went to sleep with the sun down. When it got, right after it got dark, they went to bed, and then they woke up before the sunrise. They watched the sunrise. They spent the day in and out of the sun. They watched the sunset, sun went down, and they went to sleep. So when you're not doing that, you're violating all of nature's laws, and the medical literature can explain why that increases the risk of cardiovascular disease and other disorders. So, getting that, these circadian rhythms. There was actually a recent study that came out that talked about the concept of eveningness. So people who describe themselves as night owls. So they got the same amount of sleep as the other people, same duration and time of sleep, but they went to sleep later. They were the night owls. And the night owls had double the risk of coronary artery calcification. So we have to get to sleep on time. And then the second part of that circadian rhythm is that all things in nature, everything's outside. So all plants, all animals are outside, and we're the only dummies who sit there and have these conversations inside. I often record outside, and I'm working towards doing that even more, in the future, and spending more time outside in that area. But the skin is more than just something that we would put lotion on or cream on and protect the aesthetic. The skin is a solar panel. The eyeballs are a solar panel. They're built to collect light. And the more light that we collect, natural light, the longer we're going to live. The more time we spend outside, the longer we're going to live. So those are hopefully just a couple easy strategies. From a food standpoint, listen, seafood is the healthiest food on the planet. I know where you live, again, Pacific Northwest, you got wild salmon, you've got clams and oysters and Again, all these phenomenal sea creatures that are very high in omega-3 fatty acids. People with the highest levels of omega-3 fatty acids from eating seafood have the lowest risk of everything. They've got the best brain health, the best heart health, anti-cancer, longevity, immune health, everything. So, packing in wild seafood, I think, is also super important.
What do you feel around exercise? And I know we've got an audience of different age groups, so maybe you could talk to us about people who are maybe in their 20s, 40s, 60s, 70s, etc. Because obviously people are going to have certain limitations due to their age.
Well, I think one of the most important things about exercise is just to start slow, right? The problem arises when people would, I played high school football 35 years ago, and then I'm going to go run up this mountain. If I haven't done anything in the interim, I'm going to be in trouble. Mm-hmm. So you always want to gradually build up, whatever it may be. But my favorite activity, you and I touched on this before we start, hit the record button, and that is mountain biking. I'm a huge mountain biking fan, and there's different levels for everybody. Out where you live, I mean, there's trails that are literally, they're like this steep, yeah. Going downhill. That's not, for everybody, of course, but just getting onto the road or getting onto a trail. I find that is very rewarding, but there's so many different physical activities: stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, hiking, yoga, martial arts, breath work. There's so many things that people could do, really at any health level. And maybe one of the best things, to advise really is just to get involved with someone who's an expert. Yeah, you can watch YouTube videos and things like that, and you can work on some things from, at home. You don't have to go to the gym. You could drop on the floor and do push-ups, pull-ups, squats, lunges, whatever it may be. But also getting professional guidance can be helpful.
Yeah, I found a lot of my clients in the past, within my nutrition practice, when it comes to movement, they've not had a whole lot of confidence to be able to go out and do stuff. But once they start doing some stuff individually, building their strength up and their stamina and their confidence, then working in like more of a group setting and building a community around the interest that they have within that particular exercise or sport or movement, then that absolutely works wonders, that communal piece.
Totally agree. Community is definitely one of our big tenets inside of our Think Well area. And, over the last 4 years, community was totally destroyed. And people suffered, because of it. So finding that sense of community is absolutely critical. And there are a lot of ways to do it, whether it's your local bike shop, Facebook, groups and meetups, or maybe it's a church, group that people would get into, synagogue, religious, faith-based, groups. But there's definitely a lot of those, opportunities, and doing things in a group is always better. It's always better. It's communal. It's the way that our ancestors lived, in communities, in small tribes. One person supporting another. And I think, again, it helps you find like-minded people, which is more important than ever.
I'd love to ask you about, it's just come onto the top of my head just right now in regards to, because I see there's a couple of schools close by, and I see the younger teenagers walking by constantly, and these like stimulant monster drinks and these energy drinks that seem to be in like the most, you don't get these portion sizes in the UK where I'm from, but these massive cans. Can you talk to us a little bit about younger people? Like I see 13-year-olds consuming these drinks, and they're obviously, their bodies are developing, their nervous system's developing, the actual physical structure of their heart is developing. Is there any research, or have you got any experience in regards to like what those incredibly stimulating drinks with obviously sugar and caffeine can do to like a younger body?
Yeah, I don't want to throw all those drinks under the bus, although I easily could, but I think there's clearly products that are very bad, and then there's products that are probably bad, and then there's other products that are like, it's probably not that big of a deal, especially once in a while. So, there are ones, of course, that have artificial colors, artificial flavors. Those are absolutely poison. That's very clear in the medical literature. There's more and more data coming out about sweeteners like erythritol and xylitol being problematic. So I would definitely avoid those. If you're going to tell me about an organic product, for example, that's got organic cane sugar, or maybe sweetened with organic fruit juice, And maybe it's got some amino acids in there. It's got some extra vitamins in there. It's got purified water in there. It's in a can or a glass bottle and not plastic. Plastic is absolute poison. I would never recommend consuming anything with plastic. Plastic is for emergencies. The literature on that is very clear as well, especially for the young developing person, and hormonal and endocrine effects of that. And then the caffeine aspect. The literature on caffeine is kind of mixed. I don't encourage children to drink caffeine. I don't encourage necessarily anybody to drink caffeine. But as it relates to adults and coffee, it turns out actually there's a lot of different cardiovascular benefits and brain benefits and longevity benefits and anti-cancer benefits in most of the literature about coffee drinkers, especially when it's done organically. So when you do an organic product tested for glyphosate, for example, tested for mold mycotoxins, that's all super important. But I mean, to your point, I mean, some of these beverages that the kids are, the majority of children, they're sitting there on tech, they're drinking and eating poison, they're staying up late, they don't get sunshine, they're done. They're not going to make it. They're not going to have the fulfilled life that they deserve and that they should have been born into. And it's radically important for us to do something about it. Wake up the parents. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly got to go through the parents. I mean, I'm not expecting the manufacturers of these drinks or the regulatory bodies of these drinks or the health government agencies are going to do anything about it. Obviously, that's about money and access. But yeah, I think that a lot of responsibility comes onto the parents in regards to what your child is consuming, what they actually feel driven to wanting to consume. Like, why would your child need to have something like that at 9 o'clock in the morning? How have they slept? Like, how have they eaten beforehand? So those things are very key aspects when it comes to consuming something like that. So yeah, I really appreciate your opinions on that. And I think there's certainly a place for, let's say there's plenty of teas, like you have a mate that's got caffeine and good quality coffee. I just think that the young, like 13, 14, 15-year-olds, like their bodies have yet to develop the full capacity to be able to deal with these very strong chemicals, especially in a day where they might be going to school and doing activities, etc. But yeah, that's another big topic. But
well, I mean, maybe in the future we could do another episode about what it means to be a lousy parent. We'll talk about
that. But that might be a series of
that would be a series.
Fantastic. I'd love to talk to you about medical freedom and what that means. What does that mean to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, medical freedom means everything, so I spoke at events, like Freedom Fest, over the years, and it's now more important than ever. Like we need freedom of speech to be able to discuss these issues. We need freedom of information in order to research these issues. We need freedom of choice when it comes to our healthcare. That's just our given right. And then, of course, we need, to encourage the freedom of discussion like we are now. Like we should encourage, debates about these different things. You think one way, I think another. Let's try and talk it out. And at the end, we may, agree to disagree. And we live with those consequences. But, ultimately, listen, if you want to inject something in your body, if you want to swallow something into your body or into your children, I think it's child abuse. But I have to go along the freedom line and say, hey, if you want to do that, to you and yours, then I have to distance myself from that. Yeah. And I'll take care of mine. And that's all there is to it. The government should have no role in healthcare whatsoever. Everything that they've ever done or recommended has been wrong. And, again, we should always have the platform to be able to discuss these issues.
Yeah, I think if you've not recognized over the past 4 or 5 years that the government does not have our health as its best interest, then you've obviously not been listening to the many, many individuals that thankfully have a platform to be able to share these types of information and have unbelievable conversations that we wouldn't have been able to have 10 years ago. I know the platform of podcasting is absolutely revolutionized the access to information to esteemed individuals. Like I can only imagine if I went to university now and I wanted to study about like neuroscience and health and all these things, I could just listen to these people's podcasts and learn so much more than I ever could at university. So we are in a quite special space for that. And just on that topic, I'd love to get some recommendations from you in regards to podcasts, speakers. I know you've got your own book out there, like just to learn people specifically around like heart health.
Yeah, I'll definitely toot my own horn and say that I believe I'm the best for cardiovascular diseases. I believe that I'm the best at root cause medicine. So anything that I would say would extrapolate into the brain realm, into the cancer realm, into the immune support realm, longevity realm. A lot of different opinions are out there. I also tell people to just like trust like common sense. If you hear something that this, it doesn't jive, or it's, again, just something that just doesn't seem right or too good to be true, think about it. Our concept, our 100-year heart method is eat well, live well, think well, test, don't guess. So do the most advanced testing in the world to look at, blood, urine, stool, saliva, so many different things that we can do. Use non-invasive, non-radiation based testing, and then evidence-based supplements. You guys have great products, evidence-based supplements that get the job done, but the supplements supplement. They eat well, live well, think well. And then the last category would be biohacking strategies. So sauna, red light, IV therapy, methylene blue, ozone. I mean, you can go on and on and on. I just truly, I spoke at the American Academy of Anti-Aging in Las Vegas in December. And there's 500, 600, 700 booths there of people talking about anti-aging and longevity products. And, my wife's company is called Wild Mamas. Mine is Natural Heart Doctor. And we've got some bison organ in a capsule, encapsulated products. And as people would come up, and I'm like, there's no better and more important thing in this entire room than these foundational food products. Like there's nothing better. There's no biohack that will do better than the foundational stuff. And if you do all the foundational stuff, you may not need all the tech. Yeah. But the tech is there and available to you. And that's how, we would, roll with that. As far as like other podcasters and people who I listen to, I really don't listen to, I tend to, reach, into the basic, sciences and just kind of do the original, research myself. I will credit, someone, and no one's perfect, right? So you have to listen to various authorities and then decide what makes sense and and try and extract the best from everybody. Be a little bit critical about what everybody says, especially when it kind of goes against this ancestral way of living. Simon, let me say one more thing too. Because it goes back to like this family history and genetics type thing. There was a movie years ago called Castaway with the actor Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks winds up on the remote island with the volleyball Wolfson after a plane crash. So on the island, he eats coconuts and seafood and avocados, right? He goes to sleep just after it gets dark. He awakes before the sunrise. He watches the sunrise. He spends the whole day in and out of the sun. He's physically active. There's no chemicals, in that island as much as the whole planet's destroyed and polluted. But, the island, you would say, is probably as pristine as you're going to get. Mm-hmm. The only thing he suffers from, he's lonely, and that's social isolation. That's obviously very devastating. But my point is, no matter what your genetics are, if you're on the island where Tom Hanks was and you're there with your tribe, aside from trauma, you live forever. There's no cancer. There's no brain disease. There's no heart disease. You live forever on that island. That's how we're built, and we're perfect. So anyone who would say anything contrary to that, I guess, I don't know. That's what I would say. But otherwise, I don't really listen to too many other, authorities. I've listened to people over the years, but it's really just kind of commonsensical, stuff. That's what I do.
Yeah, the foundational stuff doesn't really change. And I think it's really important for people to become a little bit more aware of the foundational pieces when it does come to food and nutrition and their digestive system and their nervous system, and become empowered a little bit more in regards to how those things actually work and how the external world affects those. And I think a lot of people will become a lot more empowered very quickly and recognize what they can do and what they should avoid that's going to benefit their health. I remember when I first started practicing, for some reason, most people I was seeing were like 50-year-old women, and they dealt with the conventional model for decades and decades and done drug after drug. And my initial session was nearly 2 hours long, like it's a very long intake form of conversation, and these individuals afterwards, I'd ask them, how they felt the session went. And they'd never really ever been listened to in their lives for 2 hours, when I was asking good questions and just sitting there listening, holding space, and being with them that the whole process. And they probably have hundreds of doctor's appointments of like, maybe 8 minutes to 10 minutes where it wasn't a two-way conversation. It certainly wasn't in benefit towards them doing most of the talking. And they just found so much relief that somebody would actually listen to them and take their kind of whole story into consideration. And yeah, I found that to be a very profound piece of information. And once I kind of opened that door and created that practitioner alliance, they were so excited and motivated to learn more about themselves and their bodies, and what it meant to be like a human being, and to be a thriving one at that. So yeah, I think learning those foundational pieces is unbelievably available to you. You just need to find the motivation to be able to do that.
Yeah, most certainly. And I as you were talking too, I was also thinking about other information that I would tell people to go after, as opposed to health related stuff. And the stuff that I listen to, it has to do with the money in the banking system. It has to do with inflation. It has to do with currency wars and crises.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one thing, and I think also is that kind of like preparing for what's next. And there's always something that's next. History tells us, right, that there's there's this and this and this and this and this and this, and there's always something that's next. So where do you want to be when the next thing hits, and how prepared do you want to be? So I can't name like any particular prepper shows and stuff like that, but the key really is to prep, like have food on hand, have water on hand, be secure in your shelter, be secure in your protection. Listen, I guess if, for example, back from my childhood, right, if there was some kind of, global, nuclear war, like everybody's going to die, and sooner than later. But if there's a problem with the power grid, for example, if there's a cyber attack, which the Obamas just made a movie called Leave the World Behind, which is about the cyber attack. They just told us, the Obamas, the former president and former first lady, they produced this movie. So cyber attack, power, currency crisis, and then of course, some kind of health related tactic that they would, pull on the world again. So, do you want to be prepared? Because, you may not be able to survive the zombie apocalypse, for years, but can you get, through maybe the first, couple weeks of some kind of mega shock? Listen, I don't want to sound fearful or conspiratorial, but again, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and really things can go sideways within minutes.
Sure.
Within minutes, and consider yourself warned if you don't know this already.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that preparation piece is huge, and I think that actually preparing your nervous system to be able to deal with a complete wild shock is a very important piece as well. Like, the last thing you want to do is be freaking out and panicking. That's not going to serve anybody, especially you or your family. So yeah, good advice. I appreciate that. We're just going to finish up here. We've certainly spoken about some things that people can do right now, but if we can just talk about a few key things. So the question we asked at the top of the show is, what are the key precautionary steps people can take to improve their heart health today? Can you give us a couple of key ones?
I mean, first thing is totally free, right? Get outside. Get outside more often. Just focus on spending time outside every single day, no matter what the weather is. Bundle up on the clothing. I used to, road bike with a place out of Chicago, and the motto there was, "There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes." And the weather was pretty lousy, so you got to come up with a good clothes. So spend more time outside. Go to sleep a little bit earlier. Eat more seafood. Focus on your relationships. Avoid environmental toxins and pollutants, of which there are hundreds of thousands of them. And maybe the final thing I'll say is make sure that the home you are living in does not have water damage, mold, and or bacterial growth. You want to make sure that you are not living in a home that is a sick home. It's talked about in the Bible 3,500 years ago in the book of Leviticus by Moses, chapter 14, the problems with mold. And now the situation is infinitely worse for many, many, many reasons. So if you're sick, if you've got brain fog, if you've got any kind of mental health concerns, cardiovascular concerns, check your home for water damaged mold and bacteria.
Beautifully said. Fantastic. That's incredible advice, Dr. Jack. Thank you so much. Where is the best place people can connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, Natural Heart Doctor is our website, naturalheartdoctor.com. You can get my book for free, freeheartbook.com. We're all over social media. So, I try and get the best of health and wellness information out there, but I am a family man first and foremost. My wife and my 4 kids. So I'm very busy and engaged with them. We unschool our children, and we just have fun. We play. It's the greatest thing in the entire world. I spent the 31 years of my life in a classroom under the artificial lights, and it got me to where I am now. And I'm not, again. So if you want to be a brain surgeon, that's the path you're going to have to take. But again, really focus on outdoor living and really doing the stuff that truly, truly, truly matters.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Jack. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
Awesome. Well, that is it for this episode of Truehope Cast, the official podcast of Truehope Canada. For more information about Dr. Jack, I will leave all the necessary links in the show notes in the description, so you can check that out. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. You can leave us a review if you fancy that. But that is it for this week. We'll see you soon.